Blog Talk Radio.
Michel Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Nege AMANSEM Da, Medinde Ujirapo, Kwesi, Rana Hibata, Akan, Akwamumana Maruka, Etipi Lu Ujirapo, Ujiraman Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, people meaning African Black people. Today is AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Rana Hibata, Akan. Ojirapo, the Afuraitkaitnut Nation in North America, within ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. The chat room is opened up. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one Khunem Blog Talk. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised so we can interact with you in that fashion. We typically have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanto Nanasom, Ancient Authentic Akan and Ancestral Religion on Joda on Monday night. So we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom and Ancestral Religion, first and foremost because we are Akan, secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan culture and cosmology, religious practice, ritual practice, and so forth, from individuals who are misinformed, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but also from those Akan individuals on the continent of Afuraitkai who have been infected with Christianity, Islam, white culture in general, and therefore those infections show up in their expressions or explications of the culture. So therefore, when they're talking about cosmology and culture, you'll find they often weave in misinformation like monotheism and other kinds of foolishness because they've been corrupt. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which is rooted in our ancient Akan culture of ancient Kanat, the title of ancient Nubia. Our people migrated from Kanat, the Nubian Empire, a couple of thousand years ago to the western part of the continent, reestablished the Kanat Empire, Ghana Empire, a couple of thousand years ago. Hundreds of years later, some of our people migrated further south from those regions because of Muslim invasion, reestablished the Akana Empire near the Forest Belt and Savannah region. And hundreds of years after that, some of our people were taken from those regions, forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kepie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. This is how we ended up as Akan people from ancient Kanat, ancient quote-unquote Nubia, to West Afuraitkai into the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious culture, practice, that is thousands and thousands of years old, even though we were forced into the Western Hemisphere. So our Akan ancestral religion manifests as Winti in Suriname and South America. It is manifest as Obia in Jamaica. It is manifest as Hoodoo in North America. Hoodoo coming from the Akan term Undu, which is the Akan term Undu, which means medicine from root trees, plant life, root work, and so forth. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through conjuring the spirit. So root work and conjure. Hoodoo comes from the Akan term Undu, meaning the same thing as Kanche, which means to utter incantations to bring down the spirits in the Akan language. Undu and Kanche became Hoodoo and Kanje, or conjure, in North America. It is the Akan ancestral religion. So that's what we deal with on Monday night. On Tuesday night, Abenada, we have Ujira, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, and showing how it impacts every aspect of Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut, African Black life. Ancestral religion, in essence, is the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order, with the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. These are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We say through Ojira, purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law, ritually restoring balance, so that we can align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. And that is what our ancestral culture is about. Executing our function in creation, aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order every moment of every day. And when we make mistakes, legitimate mistakes, we engage the ritual practice of incorporating law and restoring balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. So we deal with texts, ritual practices, ancient texts from Kamit, orature, oral texts, and practices from ancestral religious practices around the continent, including in North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, wherever our people were forced into the Western Hemisphere. We maintained our ancestral religious practices in our blood circles. We are born with the Aboso Marisha Vodu, Ntoro. No one can give us that. We're not dependent on anyone outside of our direct blood circles for our ancestral religious practice. We're not dependent on traveling to the continent or traveling anywhere else to receive our ancestral religion. It is inborn and innate within us. And we've maintained it here for hundreds of years in the Western Hemisphere. So we deal with purification, Ojira, of ancestral religion, and how it impacts every aspect of our lives on Benada Abnanat Tuesday nights for the Ojira broadcast. Wednesday nights we have Egua Marketplace, where we showcase Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving the Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut community in a positive capacity, those who maintain their ancestral religious values in the process. And we have published our Okom economic development model, which is an economic development model rooted in our ancestral religious values to address our issues, our needs. On tonight is Yada, also called Abada Thursday. AMANSEM means affairs of the nation. We're talking about the affairs of ODWIRAMAN, the purified Ojira, Oman nation, mine in the land of the West, the land of the setting sun. So ODWIRAMAN means the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. These definitions exist in the language of ancient Kamit and Kanat, Jida meaning purification, mine meaning nation, mine meaning land of the setting sun, the West. In the Akan language, the exact same definitions are maintained, of course, because the language is directly descendant. So Ojira means purification, Akan, mine means nation, mine means West, and so forth. So the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. When we talk about AMANNE, or nationism, as the purification of nationalism, and we therefore have a nationist perspective and approach as opposed to a nationalist approach. Nationalism is recognizing the reality that the Oman, the nation, is an entity, it's a living, breathing entity governed by specific abosom, or forces in creation, just like your organs are entities that have children, which are cells, and the cells serve their parent organs, and when they serve their parent organs, they also serve you, the great body, at the same time. And nation is a living entity governed by specific abosom. And the children of the nation are the cells operating within the nation and help support the nation. And they are governed by the same divinities that govern the Oman, that govern that organ. And we live in harmony with that organ, support that entity, because we live in harmony with the abosom that govern us and the entity in and of itself. And we're engaging life in a nationist perspective, living in harmony with our divine functioning creation as individuals, as they are interdependent upon one another as Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people, but also serving the nation itself as a living, breathing entity governed by forces in creation. You must align with the forces of creation, the abosom, the orisha, the vodu that govern your nation, your entity, your collective, so that you can make proper decisions. Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. We were forced into a certain region of the Earth Mother's body. Because we are forced into this region, we begin to interact and interface with Asase Afua, the fertile Earth Mother, Asase Ya, the stern Earth Mother, the two Earth Mother divinities. We interface in this region with them because we have interfaced with them, interfaced with the Abosom, the forces in nature, the Orisha that manifest in this region in a unique fashion, and become possessed by the divinities as they manifest in this region in a unique fashion, tying ourselves to the land, being possessed by the Abosom of the land of this region. Therefore, we take on a locative identity rooted in our interfacing with this region of the Earth Mother's body and our blending of ancestral blood circles in this region as we interface with the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou in this region. And therefore, we have forged a unique energetic identity, a collective identity, a locative identity that's unique amongst Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the world. And therefore, we have a specific means by which we must function as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the West, which is different from Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in other regions. Just like everybody else has their own certain dietary taboos and social taboos and so forth, so do we. So we need to know exactly who we are based on the blending of our ancestral blood circles, spirit genetic blood circles, and our interfacing for hundreds of years in this region of the Earth Mother. This is what we deal with regard to ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation. AMANSEM, affairs of the nation, is talking about the affairs that affect us, ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere, and how we approach our issues from a nationist perspective. Not a nationalist perspective, but a nationist perspective, and AMANNE perspective. One of the things that we have coming up is the second annual ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere Conference. Our second annual conference, June 24th, here in Washington, D.C. It's an all-day event. It is free and open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people only, as all of our conferences and presentations are. We'll have a number of presenters dealing with different aspects of AMANNE, nationism, AMANSEM, nation building, the 7 principal values of nation building, methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing institutions, training institutions, educational institutions, cultural institutions, ritual institutions, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, building of homes on acquired land, and the manufacturing of clothing. These 7 principal values of nation building, restoration. We'll have people speaking and presenting on these different values of nation building and so forth, and their success in these different areas of nation building, restoration. We'll have our all-day Ikwa marketplace, where we have our vendors selling their products and services and so forth that serve the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut community. That's all day long. You shop with the vendors. We have our different presentations throughout the day. The free event, it is for the entire family, youth, all the way through elders and eldresses and so forth. So this is our second annual event that is June 24th. We posted the event notification for that. You can go to our ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE page with regard to that. As we do with every presentation and every conference, we'll be giving away a free copy of our book. We'll be publishing and releasing the second volume of ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE, the Purified Nation Conference book. That second volume will be released that day. We'll be giving away a free softcover version of that to everyone who attends the conference. And then the ebook version will be online for free, and then the softcover version will be online as well for purchase for those who would like to purchase it, but the ebook version will be free. And that's true of all 25 of our books. The ebook versions of our books are free. The softcover versions range from $8 to $11. So we have about 7 vending spaces left available for the conference. If you would like to vend at the conference in the Ekwa Marketplace, go to our page as soon as possible. The vending fee is $30 for the entire day. It's from 12 a.m. to 7 p.m. We provide 1 6-foot table and 2 chairs. So $30 for the entire day. First come, first serve. We only have 7 tables left. For those who would like to place an ad for their business organization, or institution in our journal, in our book, that will be given away for free to everyone at the event, and also the free ebook version will be on our website permanently. You can place an ad there. We've had over 3 million hits on our website over the past 12 months. So when people go and download our free book, they'll be downloading this free book as well. Every time they download the free book, they will be able to see your ad. So that'll be a constant, perpetual business for you from that point on. We have, the book is 8.5 by 11 size, full color. A 1/4 space ad, a 1/4 page ad is $25. A 1/2 page ad is $35. A full page ad is $50. And of course, they're all in full color. So if you'd like to promote your business, it's the way to engage in that home economic development, as we talked about. You can place an ad. We need those ads as soon as possible so we can begin to format the journal. So all of that information is on the website, the Divine and Ancestral page on the website. And that lends itself directly to the topic of tonight, the Ntoro, the God, the deity, Khunem and ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation in the Western Hemisphere. And we're going to talk about the Famine Stela, a specific document dealing with the deity Khunem in ancient Kamit. We did a post of a short article today on Facebook and on our network, ODWIRAMAN network and so forth. We're going to go through that information to show the connection, to show the cosmological foundation for economic activity rooted in this specific document, this specific stela that was inscribed on in ancient Kemet thousands of years ago. When we look at the text of ancient Kemet and Kanat, these are living, breathing texts. They're not static documents that just represent what was taking place at the time, and that's it. When you actually have a real knowledge of the culture, then these are living, breathing texts that have utility today. So, for example, when you look at the Runu Pert and Heru, the so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day and so forth, and the ritual prayers and so forth you find in the text, and we've talked about this in one of our broadcasts, specifically the text of giving nest or giving breath to the spirit of the individual, and there's an invocation to the divinity to give the divine breath to invigorate the individual and so forth. Yes, that's a text dealing with someone who made their transition. The spirit is separated from the body as they're journeying from the physical world and the community, the living community, and they're making their way to the ancestral realm. They can get caught up and can get earthbound by other earthbound spirits who are not able to enter into the realm of the honored ancestors and ancestors. So that earthbound, hanging around the spots where they died, suffering, lashing out, trying to control individuals and so forth. It's like someone being shot or killed on a corner and so forth, and the spirit is still hovering around the spot where their blood soaked the earth and so forth. And everybody driving by that corner, walking by that corner, they feel a negative energy, or they get distracted with their driving and they have a crash because that spirit is still distracting people and trying to influence people and so forth. When a person makes their transition, the spirit separates from the body, so they're moving to journey to the ancestral realm, to the region where the honored ancestors and ancestors are seated. If they don't make that journey, they can get caught up, earthbound, just like these other negative spirits, and suffer in that capacity for centuries. So these ritual texts of ancient Kemet, the Runu, Pert, and Heru, assist the individual in overcoming those negative entities to repel them so they can have energy and they can operate and move and transform and go to the ancestral realm and operate comfortably with their ancestors and ancestors who preceded them in transition and death, so they can live amongst that community. And then when we pour libation and communicate and call on them, evoke them, they come and assist us and direct us here on earth, sometimes through spirit possession, communication, divination, and then they return to the ancestral realm, seated comfortably, operating in a harmonious capacity. So these texts, such as the text of giving breath to the deceased, that divine living energy that is ritually projected to the deceased spirit so they can have the power to repel negative entities. Yes, that's a central feature of that text. But it also can be used ritually to assist people physically today as part of a ritual practice, a medicinal practice. Chapter is giving breath to the individual so they can be empowered and invigorated. Reading that chapter as a ritual incantation and so forth assists individuals who are going through an asthmatic episode. And we gave the example of a sister whose daughter was going through an asthmatic attack and had to go to the hospital and they couldn't figure out what to do and so forth. We recommended that she use that ritual text, that incantation, which she did, and it helped to clear up the blockages for the young child, and she was able to overcome that negative effect. So these texts are living and breathing. Every text has a specific application to our everyday lives. And when you understand the culture and actually invoke these divinities, you can see where these texts have their utility in our lives. This is what we were addressing today. We're going to go through the posts that we made today, and then we're going to go through some detail from the text. So the posts that we made today on Facebook, but also in our ODWIRAMAN network. We have a separate social media network, the ODWIRAMAN Purified Nation network, which you can join. Of course, Facebook often restricts our people whenever we're posting accurate information, things that are too black, so they will shut you down or put you in Facebook jail or restrict your activities on Facebook. We need to have our own separate social media network that are not controlled by the whites and their offspring. We have our own separate social media network, ODWIRAMAN.spruce.com. So we posted this information to those members as well as on Facebook, as well as on Google+. So we titled that Khunem, the Famine Stela, and the Divine Mandate to Support Our Own Institutions. The Famine Stela, stone, document carved in stone and so forth. The Famine Stela of the Ntoro, the deity Khunem, is an ancient text which addresses the necessity of literally funding and supporting our religious educational institutions. In the text, the Ainsu is the term for king of Kamit. In the third dynasty, Joseru laments about the fact that Hapi, the Nile divinity and river, had not risen to its proper height in 7 years. So there was a famine for 7 years. Of course, this is where the whites and their offspring still the 7 years famine in the Bible with their fictional cartoon characters of the Bible, which never existed. The Hapi River did not rise to its proper height in 7 years, therefore there was a famine. Because of this drought, widespread famine causing death and misery throughout Kamit. Joseru, the Ainsu, the king, recognized that there must be a spiritual cause for this unprecedented drought. Typically, sometimes you have certain situations that occur, but when they are unprecedented in this fashion, Yabosom will allow you or let you see and make you see in the Unsamanto, the Nananoman Samanto, the spiritually cultivated ancestors, the ancestors will allow you to see, will make you see that there's a spiritual cause for this unprecedented event. And he began to recognize that. He therefore queried one of his chiefs and directed that chief to examine the ancient text to find out what Ntoro, what divinity governs the relief of the Hapi River, and the names of the Ntoro, the deities, the Necheru, the mythicalized, the Ntoro, the Abosom, the Orisha, the divinities. What are the names of those divinities of the shrine of the region where the river begins to swell. The chief returned to the king, the Ensu, with the answer, telling the Ensu just there that Khunem is the Ntoro, the divinity who governs the release of the water. He pulls back the bolts and releases the water of Hapi so it can swell and overrun the banks of the river. Every year in Kamit, at a certain time of the year, the river would swell, overrun the banks of the river for a number of months. And then once the water began to recede, fertile black silk had been deposited, soil had been deposited on the bank. Then people go and plant so the crops can come forward in the proper time and there will be abundance in the land because it hardly ever rained in ancient Kamit. So the whole economy was dependent on the river swelling every year and overrunning the banks and depositing that fertile black silk, that Kamit, that black land. Hapi is the divinity animating the river. Khunem is the divinity that releases the flood of Hapi. The chief returned, letting the king know, the Ensu know, that Khunem is the divinity who governs the release of the river. When Jaseru, the Per'ah, the quote-unquote pharaoh, the Per'ah Jaseru, learned of more detail, he eventually journeyed to the shrine of the Ntoro, Khunem, which is in southern Kamit, in the region of Abu, which they call Elephantine, that Abu, the southern border of the kingdom and queendom, the nation. He went there. He went into the Ntoro, the house of the divinity, the temple of the deity, and he went to the shrine of the divinity, and Jaseru invoked the Ntoro Khunem, the deity Khunem, and the spirit of Khunem came forward and spoke to Jaseru. Khunem is the divinity you see, is the flat-horned ram divinity that we show in the image. Khunem informed Jaseru of all of the precious metals and stones of the region. He also informed him that these precious metals and stones had not been mined and employed in the construction and repair of the shrines of the Ntoro, the divinity, because the shrines had fallen into disrepair and, of course, disuse, lack of use. Disorder manifested in the land and the people. This was the cause of the drought and the famine. Jaseru committed to restoring the shrines and ritual practices of the Ntoro, the divinities of the region, and the deity Khunem committed to making the Hapi River flow once again and bring abundance to the land, which is what occurred. The key is when we allow ourselves to fall out of ritual practice, when we cease directly invoking and evoking the Abosom and Nananom Isamato, the Ntoro and Akutu, the Abosom and Isamato, the deities and ancestral spirits, the Orisha and Ngungun, Vodou and Kuvita, the deities and ancestral spirits, when we cease directly invoking and evoking them ritually, then we fall out of aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. The Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the deities are the forces in nature. They are the organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. Just like your organs regulate order amongst the cells of your body, the deities, which are the organs within the great divine body of AMANNE, Amen, or Inyamewa, Inyame, the Mother and Father Supreme Being, the deities are organs. They regulate order within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, within the universe. We are the cells of the deity, so they regulate order with us. When the cells operate outside of the functions of the organ of which they are a component part, outside of their direct parent, then they create disorder in the body, cancerous, manifestations in the body. When we as cells operate outside of the functioning of the divinities that govern our head, we're operating outside of divine order. The Abosom are the embodiments of divine order in creation. If we operate outside of functioning of the divinities that govern us, we are literally the cells who are trying, like liver cells, trying not to support liver function, trying to do something else. Heart cells trying not to support the functions of the heart, trying to do something else, or latching on to other bacteria and toxins and so forth, and trying to operate in harmony with them, as opposed to supporting heart function. We operate outside of the functioning of the divinities that govern our head, and we create disorder within ourselves. But because we are cells, we are interdependent upon other cells within the body, meaning other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the community. When we create disorder within ourselves, and we're connected to other people, then we create disorder within them. We project and propel disordered energy and behavior and influence towards other individuals, and they feel that pressure. And those who are receptive to that, they will get pushed into and influenced into disorder themselves. And then you begin to create a communal manifestation of disorder, when people are not invoking the forces that actually regulate order, that will keep you back in alignment with order. When we seek to evoke the Nananong Insamanko, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, who will guide us towards the proper ritual practices that help us to align with the divinities based on our blood cells. All Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people are connected to the forces of nature. But because we move to different areas of the Earth Mother, we eat different foods, we have different dietary taboos and social taboos and so forth. The manifestation of the Abosom, Marisha Vodou, and so forth in a certain region of the Earth Mother is slightly different than the other regions. So the manner in which we approach them, our ritual songs, ritual dances, ritual prayers, and so forth will be slightly different based on that shift. The Nananong Insamanko, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors who lived in these regions, functioned in these regions, perfected life in these regions, perfected themselves, spiritually cultivated themselves to perfection. They have the experience to show you exactly how to harmonize with the Abosom based on your spirit genetic blood circle in this particular region of the Earth Mother. So we learn from them the guidance on how to align with the Abosom, the forces in nature, based on our blood circle. They give us that proper guidance based on experience. The Abosom, the forces of nature, give us the power to execute our function in creation without creating disorder in the process. So we get the power and the replenishment of that power from the forces of nature to execute our function. From the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, we are given the guidance on how to utilize that power based on our specific spirit genetic blood circle. What's the best means by which an Akan person aligns with the force of nature that governs the sun, as opposed to a Yoruba person who's governed by that same divinity? The kind of ritual songs, ritual dances, shrines that we utilize in the Akan tradition will be slightly different than in the Yoruba tradition, based on our different migrations to different parts of the Earth Mother and our development of a culture in that region. It will be fundamentally similar, but there will be slight differences, and those slight differences are key. Just like you have children, they come from you, the parents, from the same mother and same father, but there will be slight differences that must be acknowledged. 99% of the food you serve them for dinner will be fine with all of your children. But then less than 1%, one child may be allergic to bananas or some other food. If you don't acknowledge that slight difference, then you give them the same food you give to the other children, and then they have a horrible allergic reaction. You must acknowledge the reality of the differences and deal with it. So that's why we say when we allow ourselves to fall out of ritual practice, when we cease directly invoking and evoking the Abosom and Nananong Insamanko, the deities and ancestral spirit, then we fall out of aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. When we are not constantly and consistently engaging in thoughts, intentions, and actions which are expressive of divine order, disorder manifests. We thus perpetuate disorder in our lives and negatively influence others with whom we come into contact, talking about our people only. And this manifests on a large scale. An entire community suffers from the weight of spiritual discordance. This manifests as spiritual drought and famine. This is what the text is talking about. The decrees of the Ainsu, the king, the Pera'al, the so-called Pharaoh Jasuru, after he met with the divinity, after he invoked the divinity, Khunem, and he came forth to communicate, told him what the problems were. Jasuru committed to the deity, that he would reestablish the shrines, repair the shrines, reestablish them, reestablish the ritual practice and so forth. He committed to that. Then he put forward a divine or royal decree to the community to begin that process. Those decrees of the king, the Ancestral, to have the metals and precious stones mined and utilized to build, restore, and sustain the shrines of the deity, was the response to the divine mandate of Khunem. This is literally our inherited divine mandate from Khunem to us to use our resources to build, restore, and sustain our religious educational institution. That's a direct divine mandate. If we don't sustain our religious educational institution, then there's no spiritual cultivation happening amongst the people. We're not just talking about building. Institutions are ritual practices, ritual holidays, ritual practices, establishing master plan ritual practices, patriarch plan ritual practices. These are institutional efforts. If we don't sustain them, sustain the shrines of the deities, the shrines of the ancestors and ancestors, as established in the homes, also in buildings outside of the home and so forth, where people come and become realigned, whether you're in the home and establishing a shrine there, to realign yourself with divine order, or a communal shrine established for the community where we go and establish a sacred space, go into that Adai state or that ritual space to invoke the Abosom, evoke the Nanonomen Samafo, go into that ritual space to realign ourselves with order and recharge ourselves and so forth. We do not engage that process, then this order is perpetuated on a communal scale. So when we engage that process, then we can constantly realign ourselves with order. When we make mistakes, we get off track. So we can perpetuate the nation in a harmonious fashion. It is the divine mandate from the divinity Khunem to restore and sustain and maintain the shrines of the divinity. This is why the Ancestral, the King Ntoro, made that decree. That's why that decree still exists thousands of years later, carved in stone while we're reading it right now, sustaining our religious cultural institutions. Metals and stones project unique configurations of energy and are thus categorized by the Ntoro, the divinities who govern that expression of energy in creation. When we utilize such metals and stones on shrines, on our person, through ritual, we can use those energy potencies medicinally to restore and to strengthen. Such metals and stones are thus media of exchange, ritually and in the mundane sense, monetarily. So when we're talking about metals, iron, gold, copper, silver, and so forth, each one resonates at a different frequency. Therefore, they resonate at the frequency of specific forces in creation that resonate at the same frequency. So each metal, and the same thing with mineral life, they resonate at a different frequency, whether you have quartz or you have magnetite or whatever, hematite or whatever stones you have, they resonate at a specific frequency. You have both stones that govern those stones, categorize those stones, that mineral life under them, under their governance. Just like you can have a magnet moving metal across the table, every stone has some kind of magnitude. Our different organs are in alignment with these different stones and different metals. This is why we could use stones and metals and so forth for healing, to realign ourselves and restore balance to ourselves with disorders manifest, helping with digestion, helping with destroying toxic bacterial cells and viral agents and so forth, healing our people, restoring a disjointed flow of energy that's causing problems, not only problems with our emotional output, but our capacity to see beyond conditionings and so forth. So we utilize metals and stones physically to restore balance in our organs and glands and tissues and so forth, but also the energy projection to restore balance in our energy body, our emotional body, and so forth. So that's what we're talking about. So such metals and stones become media of exchange. They're exchanging energy ritually, hoping to restore balance to our organs and glands and structures, and also our energy body, but also they're media of exchange on a mundane sense monetarily. So we utilize these metals and these stones, such as gold and silver, as well as certain stones and so forth, as media of exchange or in the form of quote-unquote money. That's how we first established media of exchange in that fashion, because there was an actual value to the media of exchange, or the medium of exchange. Now today, paper money is not, it has no value. It's backed up by the confidence of what's going on in the economy, but the paper has no value in and of itself. So the money has no real value. It's backed up by a confidence. In our culture, originally, when we had a media of exchange, I want to purchase something from you, then I give you something of value. If I have gold or silver or some other metal, that's something of value. You're giving me some food that you grew on your farm, and I didn't have that particular crop. I can either exchange the crop that I have with yours, or I can give you something else of value. When we would give gold or give silver, it wasn't just because gold is shiny and silver is shiny and it has some value. We actually utilized gold in the shrine of the Abosom, utilize silver in the shrines of the Abosom, because we know the effect and the magnetic effect it has on specific divinities to draw them in, the effect it has on our bodies, our organs, our glands, our systems, and so forth. The same thing with other mineral life. These things have actual value that we can measure, that we can quantify, that we need to utilize when we're engaged in ritual practice to restore balance to ourselves physically and spiritually. So that was a real exchange of value. That's why we use it monetarily. Same thing later on when people began to use instead of a cowrie shell. Cowrie shells are used for divination. They have an effect energetically upon the spirit body, so that's something of value that we're exchanging for something else of value. That's Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit economics. Now, the decisions we make determine the direction of our lives, whether we are going to be healthy or suffer and eventually die of preventable illnesses and or addiction, whether we're going to establish and support our own businesses and employment for our people or suffer under white economic oppression perpetually, whether we are going to restore balance to our relationships with our spouses, children, community, or perpetuate negative, self-destructive behavioral patterns which hurt current and future generations. When we make decisions rooted in divine order, this changes the direction of our lives in a positive manner tangibly. However, we must cultivate the capacity to consistently make such decisions through education and ritual practice. Those Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black institutions that cultivate the learning, healing, training, and employment of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people are what sustain our people. This is why our religious educational institutions of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, and such religion, culture, and nation building, restoration are vital. This is why we have ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation Conference, AFAHYE, dealing with the 7 principal values of nation building rooted in our ancestral religious cosmology. Methods of food production and preservation, establishing those methods rooted in our culture, establishing methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure to defend our nation, establishing institutions of education, training, cultural institutions, religious institutions, training including engineering, architectural engineering, computer science, all manner of institutions must be established, including cultural and religious institutions, to maintain order in society. Establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence so that we can govern ourselves without self-destructing or imploding because of disagreement. The building of homes on acquired land, that 6th principal value of nation building restoration, and the 7th principal value the manufacturing of clothes. These 7 principal values, they represent the constellation of 7 needs of mind and nation. And so we have our ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE, our conference, where we deal with these 7 principal values. And every one of these 7 principal values, we have a connection to one or more of them based on the abosom, the divinities that govern them. Some people are governed by the divinities that govern healing, so they naturally go into that profession and they can participate and contribute to the building of the nation with regard to that principal value of nation building. Some people are children of divinities, of warfare and so forth, so they would establish that military structure. Some people are children of divinities of fertility and agriculture, so they are naturally inclined to learn how to work with the divinities of the earth to bring forth produce in a harmonious fashion to feed the people, as well as medicines and so forth. Some people are children of divinity of weaving, so they know how the best means by which to acquire those textiles, generate that cotton and so forth, manipulate those textiles to weave clothing for the protection of our people and everything else. Some people are children of divinity that deal with structure, the structure of the earth, the inner core of earth, the pa and so forth, so they're naturally inclined towards structure and architecture and building and so forth. So this is the intersection of ancestral religion, culture, and nation building. There's no separation. Depending on the divinity that governs your head, that kind of mindset manifests in your spiritual disposition, and you're naturally inclined towards certain occupations. And then you fully invest yourself in those occupations, and that serves the nation. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about supporting those institutions that serve our people, rooted in our ancestral religion, culture, and nation building. This is also why pseudo-religious institutions, Christian, Islamic, Judaic, Hebraic, Hindu, Buddhist, pseudo-metaphysical, pseudo-New Age, and so forth, are absolutely destructive to our people. They deal with fictional cartoon character deities who never existed in any form or of any race, such as Jesus, Yeshua, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, these fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and so forth, Dhammapada, Bhagavad Gita. They will never direct you towards the deity that governs your head, the male divinity or female divinity that governs your head, and the specific kinds of spiritual dispositions you manifest rooted in that energy that governs you, nor the patriclan and matriclan divinities that influence your behavior and so forth, and your divine function and creation. Those fake religions can never give you that. And therefore, you'll never align yourself with the kinds of activities that are necessary for you to contribute to the building of a sound nation. Again, when we talk about nationism, AMANNE, the purification of nationalism, we're talking about a nation as a living, breathing entity governed by specific abosom deities. We are cells within that organ, that living, breathing entity. We must execute our divine function in the world based on the deity that governs our head, in harmony with other Afuraitkaitnut people who are part of that same organ, that same nation, that same entity, serving the same major abosom deities that govern that organ. And when we do that, we know our activities are in harmony with divine order, the nation will be sustained and expand in a harmonious way. We say in that article, most Afuraitkaitnut institutions that we know of are not well supported by the Afuraitkaitnut or African community. Notwithstanding the fact that people talk about, quote-unquote, buying black, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, supporting black organizations, et cetera, on a daily basis. At the end of the day and year after year, it is proven to be largely taught. Yet at the same time, 95 to 100% of their dollars support white supremacist institutions every hour of every day. On social media, we often read memes stating buy black, support black business, support black institutions. How many memes do you see saying, I bought from this particular business, I supported this black institution? Instead of thousands of memes making the declaration, buy black. Thousands of memes stating which black institution, business organization, the person or people actually tangibly support. there is a disconnect between speech and action. We have been conditioned to preach. Since the preacher was created on the plantation to stir the emotions of the enslaved, get them to clap and nod their heads in agreement, yet never get up to actually change their condition. This has been going on for over 100 years. It continues on social media platforms millions of times per day. We preach, nod, and quote-unquote clap, meaning we hit like or share. That's the clapping. That's the nodding, the shaking our head in agreement. Then we go support white supremacist organizations and institutions. Often we are in a white business while we are clicking like or share on a meme about supporting black business. This is the disjointedness that must be examined. Our ancestral wisdom provides this examination and also provides the solution. What is the remedy for that? On one hand, the remedy for ignorance is education, simply education. So if people are ignorant of certain things, we give them the proper information. Education is the remedy for ignorance. This is one of the reasons we make all 25 of our books and all forthcoming books, 26 and 27 and onward, the ebook versions we make free downloads on our website. We do sell the softcover versions. They range between $8 and $11, but we make the ebook version. One of the reasons we do that is because education is the remedy for ignorance. Our people have been conditioned to be self-hating, self-destructive, saying our culture and people is inferior. So therefore, the idea of supporting black businesses is repulsive to them. But that's ignorance. That's a cultivation of ignorance. The remedy for that is education. Sometimes people are so self-hating that if you have some information that may seem interesting or intriguing to a certain extent, but then you have a price associated with it, then their immediate response is to figure out an excuse why not to support it, because they've been conditioned to hate anything about themselves and only embrace the whites and their offspring. So they're like, well, I don't have any money for that. I'm going to go ahead and read this information written by one of the whites and their offspring. So to cut through that, get rid of that barrier, the ebook versions of our publications are all free. That way, any black person anywhere around the world, whether they have money or not, can access this information that is vital to our development. So we remove that barrier. So that's the simple and only remedy for misinformation, for miseducation and so forth, for ignorance, to give people accurate information. And so this is why one of the reasons we do that. But then there's another, that creates part of the disjointing. People are just ignorant. They don't know about the fact that we have over $1 trillion in spending power in the course of the year in the black community. Over 95% of that we spend with white businesses, $950+ billion. And then the remaining $50+ billion we spend amongst ourselves. We could easily shift hundreds of billions of dollars away from white businesses and plug them into black businesses, and therefore we could employ all of our people. There are about 2 million black people unemployed. There are nearly 2 million black businesses in America. If each black business hired one black person, the unemployment issue will be solved instantaneously. Many of our people can't even conceive that can possibly happen. It can easily happen simply by our people taking those billions that we waste, the whites and their offspring, and transport even just a percentage of that, even a few $100 billion, the $900+ billion we spend with the whites and their offspring, we could $300 or $400 billion of that and redirect it away from white businesses to the black businesses that already exist. We would solve our unemployment issue overnight and permanently. We will be able to build hospitals, healing centers in every black community, private schools for all black children in every black community with the funds that we already spend every year, simply by shifting those funds to black businesses that already exist. All it takes is making a decision. It's not creating something new. You're already spending the money. In other words, if you have a white Chinese restaurant in a poor black neighborhood and we spend tens of millions of dollars Chinese people in poor black neighborhoods every year. You have a white Chinese business selling their food in a black neighborhood, and next door there is a black business selling food. If you give hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year to that white Chinese business, then all you're doing is employing those white Chinese people and their family and empowering their children. And at the end of the day, when they shut down the business, they leave the community and take those hundreds of thousands at the end of the year to their white community and purchase cars and homes and put their children through college and clothes and everything else. You're supporting and empowering them. If you simply made the decision to step over a few feet and support the black business only and not give a penny to the white Chinese business, then they would have to shut down because nobody's purchasing anything. They can't pay the rent, can't pay anything. They have to shut down. And now those hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to the black business, employing the black people who are on the corner, out on the street, unemployed. Now they're working every single day. Now they can use the money that they generate to rent an apartment, purchase a home, put their children through school, purchase medicine, purchase clothes for their children and so forth, get a car, empower them, their families, empower their community. All it takes is we're making the decision every single day, and the decision we are making by default is financing our own oppression because we're giving the money to our enemies, the whites and their offspring, whether it's white Asians, white Europeans, white Hindus, white Arabs, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Hispanics, and so forth. We are making the decision by default by funding them. But the average black person doesn't even think about that because we're so conditioned. So it's just simple ignorance, not knowing what's really going on. So the remedy for that is education. And when you remove the barrier of a price upon the education and say this is free, and we give away our books for free, and we do presentations in different cities as well as here, they're always free. We never charge an admission fee for a presentation, and it's open to Afuraitkaitnut people only. And we also give away a free copy of one of our softcover books to everyone who attends. We've given away over 1,300 softcover books around the country as of late, in addition to the free ebook version. So you remove that barrier. They don't feel any pressure or coercion. So they're open to receive some information. It's free and it's beneficial. And they come out of that ignorance instantaneously, very quickly, very rapidly. So that's the remedy for that disjointedness, that disconnect between speech and action. But then there's another disjointedness that manifests. Those individuals who have information, they already know about these things. They have already read about these things. They recognize that black people are suffering under white oppression economically and socially and otherwise. They're the ones who are often talking about buy black and posting memes and everything else. But then when they honestly make an assessment or you actually look at their actions, they're still spending 95 to 100% of their dollars with the white organizations, businesses, and so forth that they're posting memes about. Like the person sitting in church nodding and agreeing and clapping, but at the end of the day, 40 years later, they're still sitting in the same church nodding and agreeing and clapping, but the condition of the people has not changed in 40 years. They're still suffering. We have people who talk about supporting black businesses and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's not happening. So ignorance is one thing that's solved and remedied by education. So we solve that issue. That's the major issue. But what about hypocrisy? What is the remedy for hypocrisy? Where somebody already knows what the real information is, but they still go against it while touting accurate information. But the behavior doesn't match up. There's a disconnect between speech and action. And so we had one of the one of the elders and eldresses in the community, one of the eldresses in particular. She asked the question, she's someone's almost 80 years old, asked the question because she supports the work we do and supports black businesses and so forth. And she's looking at the different things people are saying and doing. And as an elderess, almost 80 years old, asked the question, What is wrong with these people? What is in their heads? They talk all of this stuff about supporting, yet they never do so. But they're always talking about it. And they have the information, they understand the information, they repeat the information and so forth. But at the end of the day, they do not support these institutions, things that are benefiting the people. But you can see them supporting white supremacist institutions, whether it's Chipotle, whether it's Walmart, CVS, 7-Eleven, or purchasing all kinds of products that are unnecessary, supporting white businesses all day long, every day throughout the course of the year. She said, what is wrong with these people? She's someone who supports and gives to black businesses on a regular basis, multiple times throughout the month and year and so forth, and she just doesn't get it. And the disjointedness that she's looking at is the disjointedness between speech and action. We already talked about the remedy for ignorance, which is education. What is the remedy for hypocrisy in regards to people who know the information, but their behavior doesn't line up with what they, those kinds of individuals manifesting that kind of hypocrisy negatively affect other black people who are just beginning to learn about ancestral culture and religion and practice and economics and so forth, and they're beginning to absorb this information and see that it's relevant. But then they see the people who are talking the most about it, and it turns out that these people are hypocritical, and then that sours the individual on further studying and expanding their knowledge base with regards to their culture. It becomes a barrier. And it's only a barrier because of ignorance. They don't know any better, but they assume that these people who are hypocrites are representatives of the culture itself. And if they're hypocritical, then maybe the whole culture is no different than white culture. Maybe it's just white culture and blackface. Maybe people are just preaching things and so forth, but they really don't mean what they say. Why should I even get involved in this? It's no different than the white culture I just left behind. So when people engage in hypocritical behavior that negatively impacts those who are trying to first step into some real knowledge of who they are and their ancestral culture. So what is the remedy for hypocrisy? This is where ancestral wisdom comes in. Ancestral wisdom provides this examination and also provides a solution. So when we look at these texts, these are living, breathing texts. They have utility. They have application for right now. A text written thousands of years ago has application right now. Khunem is the deity who can join. We say Khunem because in the Akan language, the name of the divinity is Khunem, which means potter. Khunem is the potter divinity. The term Khunem in ancient Kamit literally means to conjoin in the ancient language. Khunem is the ram-headed divinity seated at his divine potter's will. You see an image of the Ka, the soul of Ha'et, the soul, male or female, on the potter's wheel, and right next to it is the body of the person, and they are identical. Look like identical twins. The body of the person is on the divine potter's wheel, and the soul of the person, the Ka, or the Ka'et. Ka is the male, Ka'et is the female, right next to the soul of the person. Khunem was at the potter's wheel, and he conjoined the Ka with the Ka, the soul with the body, or the Ka'et with the Ka, the soul with the body. He conjoins them together. This is in the pre-incarnation stage. Once the soul, the Ka, the Ka'et is conjoined with the body, spirit of the individual is then sent into the womb of the woman who will become their mother, and 40 weeks later they are born into the world. That's a part of that process. AMANNE, Amen, Olokun, Olorun, Mawu, and Lisa, the great mother and great father, supreme being, we go before them, our spirits are drawn before them before we incarnate into the world as Afurakani people only. They assign a Ka or a Ka'et, a Kra, a Krawa, an Inu, a Sebido, a deity, a soul. The soul is a deity, and we wrote a book on that. The Okra complex, the soul is actually a deity. A male divinity if you're male, or female divinity if you're female. That is assigned to you by the Supreme Being to take up residence in the head region of your spirit. Just like your physical body has a smaller physical body, which is the brain that sits in the head region that regulates order within the body, and your spirit body in the head region is a spiritual entity, an organ that is installed within the head region of the spirit body. is your spirit's brain, and it regulates order within your spirit body. It's that force in your head that throughout the course of your life is always pulling you in your head towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with order, and pushing you away from thoughts, intentions, and actions that are out of harmony with order. That is a deity that we communicate with, and he or she communicates back with us. And the more involved our communication gets, you'll be able to see that divinity and see how she or he manifests herself or himself to you. You'll see that divinity that was conjoined with you on that divine potter's wheel. But they assign that divinity takes up residence in the head region. How does it take up residence in the head region? The force in nature, Khunem, uses that magnetic energy to fuse and conjoin that soul, that kai, to the spirit body of the person. So you see Khunem at his divine potter's wheel engaged in that process. He's Khunem and he's Ajala, the potter divinity that governs all the orderies, the head in the heavenly realm before the person incarnates and so forth. Ajala in Yoruba, Khunem and Khunem in ancient Kamit. Same divinity. Khunem means to conjoin. And we showed an image of him conjoining the body and the soul on the potter's wheel. In the text, Khunem facilitates the release of hot heat, the river, so that the river can join with, have union with the dry land, so that fertility, abundance will result. So he fuses together the water with the soil. The water runs over the soil, but there's a fusion that takes place, and when the fusion takes place, eventually abundance can take place. In the physical body, the same thing takes place. The river of fluid, the seminal fluid, you have sperm cells swimming in that fluid. That meets with the river of fluid, the river of blood of the female, and the ovum is within that river of blood. So the union of the white fluid and the red fluid, the union of the white crown and the red crown of ancient Kamit, the union of the two lands, then the sperm and ovum can get together, and there's a fusion and conjoining that takes place. And that conjoining that takes place is facilitated by Khunem as he conjoins. And the sealant and the manifestation is furthered and continued by the female divinity Ni, who's the female counterpart of Khunem. So they work together in that process. Just like the sperm cell penetrates the ovum, that's a conjoining. Then the ovum collapses around the sperm cell and takes what was in the cell and makes something out of it and transforms. And eventually there's cell mitosis, division, and so forth. And weeks later, the baby manifests. The ovum takes what was in the cell and brings out of it what is necessary to manifest. That's what Ni does, the female does. Khunem conjoins the penetration and the fusion. The conjoining is facilitated by Khunem. So he's the spiritual force within the fluid, participating in the animation and conjoining of the sperm cell with the ovum. And Ni is in that fluid as well, the energetic force within that fluid, making sure that once the conjoining happens, then the perpetuation and cell division and manifestation and expansion happens within the womb space and so forth. So they work together in that fashion on the physical level, but also spiritually, he's conjoining the soul, the kai, with the spirit body. And once that conjoining takes place, now you're a spirit with the divine consciousness, the deity dwelling in your head region. Now you can be guided properly. If the ka separated from you, you're a spirit without a soul. You're like a body without a brain. Then, of course, your movements and activity will be violent and destructive and disorderly. When you're disconnected from the brain. If the spiritual brain is separate, if that deity separates itself from you, or you disalign yourself from that divinity, the messages and the pull in your head is pulling you towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do something else. You're rejecting what your ka, your while your order inu is directing you to do, which is an orderly set of activities. You're rejecting that to follow the self-destructive, lust-filled activities that you learn from the white offspring. The white offspring said, no, you need to eat this kind of food, you need to engage in this kind of sexually deviant behavior, you need to embrace all this other nonsense, but your pride is leading you in a different direction. You're rejecting the deity and the pull of the deity to go along with the conditioning of our enemies, spirits of disorder. Then you create disorder within your life, whether it's dietary or social or communal and so forth, because you're disaligned from the crowd. The way to realign with the crowd is invoking the divinity Khunem. This is exactly what happened on a communal scale with the Ter'a Jasaru, quote-unquote Pharaoh King Jasaru, went to Khunem to find out what's going on, what's wrong. Khunem said the people are disjointed. They're disconnected. They're not engaged in ancestral religious practice, and therefore the shrines have fallen into disrepair. Abundance will not return to the land until the people become realigned or conjoined back to the divinity. He went to the divinity that conjoined. So once the people got reconjoined, realigned, then he released the river so the water can conjoin or be realigned and fused with the soil, and abundance can manifest. The same thing happens with us. We disconnect from the divinity that's governing us. Now that can happen through ignorance, because we've been raised in a certain fashion, conditioned in this white society to hate anything black or cultural. If we have some spiritual experience, we're taught that must be the devil, so don't pay attention to it, or we're scared to listen to our cry. If we see an ancestor or an ancestress, the spirit, we think it's the devil and all this other nonsense. We see an abosom and orisha, the white and offspring condition us to believe that's the devil and all this other nonsense, and we reject what's right in front of us out of ignorance. Well, education is the remedy for that kind of ignorance. Most people find out, actually, these are forces in creation. These are ancestresses and ancestors that you're seeing. You're supposed to align with them. Every character in the Bible is fictional, never existed. The biblical story, Quranic, Talmudic, Buddhist, Hindu, all of that is nonsense. The philosophy is foolishness, idiotic. It's pure stupidity to embrace it in any fashion, whether you call it esoteric Christianity or exoteric. Esoteric Judaism or exoteric. Esoteric Islam and that's all nonsense. Moorishism, all of that foolishness, pure stupidity. So once you're educated, you're not trapped by ignorance, then you go along and follow your crowd. Then you have other individuals, however, that they know all of that other disinformation is misinformation. They know that the abosom are real, the orisha are all real. They know that they have a trawa, a soul, a divine consciousness. They know that they should align with it. However, they're controlled by lust, misguided desire. They're still conditioned by that, so they go along with that, and then they make excuses about why they're not following their crowd. They'll try to hide the fact that they're not following, or make elaborate reasons why it's not necessary. They can still operate in this certain kind of fashion. Philosophical views and so forth. So that's hypocrisy. But the remedy for hypocrisy is spiritual cultivation. The remedy for ignorance is education, providing accurate information, along with spiritual cultivation to infuse that in and incorporate that into your life. So the first key is accurate information. The remedy for hypocrisy is spiritual cultivation, realigning with the divinity who conjoin, Khunem conjoin, to ritually invoke this divinity. That's the solution coming from our ancestral texts. Texts that were written thousands of years ago, but they speak to our existence right now. Every black person right now is suffering on one hand to a certain extent, to a large extent, by the ignorance on one hand of a large percentage of our people who still operate based on ignorance, and therefore they spend hundreds of billions of dollars with our enemies, financing our own oppression, and the result is that millions of our people are unemployed, and we are lacking in every area. We don't have the resources that we need and the institutions we need, whether they're schools or hospitals or businesses and so forth, because of the ignorance of our people, all of us are suffering. Then to a smaller extent, every black person is suffering from the hypocrisy of a segment of our people who know and have been introduced to this kind of information that's accurate, but they're still engaged in hypocritical behavior. They know about the information, they talk about it, they parrot the information, but at the same time, they're still engaged in hypocrisy. And that negatively influences the ignorant and helps to keep them ignorant, so it's a self-perpetuating slavery that the white offspring has promoted. Every one of us knows people in those different categories, but we suffer as a result as a community. Once again, this is why institutions are key and vital. You have religious educational institutions that are educating our people for free, educating our people in spiritual cultivation so people can go and engage in spiritual cultivation on their own and reject this perverse conditioning and eradicate this hypocrisy. You have institutions who engage that process on a daily basis, and they are empowering the community to move forward harmoniously. That affects us not just socially and spiritually, but economically, so that we can begin to make better decisions, sound decisions. And as soon as we make simple, sound decisions, the entirety of our lives individually and as a community transform overnight, instantaneously. This is the kind of information the whites and their offspring don't want us to understand. They want us to just think that reading about Khunem, the ram-headed deity in the pot, is just a myth and just something nice to read about. And then you have pseudo-scholars and pseudo-linguists and pseudo-spiritualists who are going around teaching and making videos and writing books, doing broadcasts, and going on trips to Afuraitkaitnut and taking people on educational tours and everything. And they have the same Eurocentric mindset in blackface, pretending they have information, throwing some terms around. They have the same foolish mindset. They don't recognize these texts are living and breathing. They're not teaching people about the invocation of these divinities in real time that can solve our problems because we're realigning our spirit with our craft, making sound decisions, being guided by these forces of nature, being able to identify them in our lives and their influence in our lives. Sometimes these divinities are communicating with us. We don't know how to contextualize that experience, so we reject it. We say, oh, I had this thought about doing this, but it's probably foolish. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move in this direction. And there was a signature on that thought of that idea of the divinity. And if you recognize that signature, you would have recognized that was Khunem directing me to engage this kind of behavior. And if I had done that, that would have benefited myself, my family, my children, other Afuraitkaitnut people. We're having experiences. We're not contextualizing them because we don't know how to, never been educated in that fashion. And then we reject them, and this order is perpetuated. These pseudo-scholars are not teaching them. They're not teaching you who Khunem is and how to invoke him ritually to solve problems in the present, right where we are right now, or other divinities as well. That's why we must have institutions of spiritual cultivation, educational institutions that are maintaining order and assisting our people to maintain order within themselves. This is the key to that piece. So we have a link to a translation of that document that we put in that, on the website, and you'll see that. We're going to go to the chat room real quick. If you have any questions or comments, and also on the phone line, if you have any questions or comments, you can hit the number 1. And we're going to put this in the chat room right now. Part of that process, and we're going to put this in the chat room right now. You can also see it on our website as well. We put the link to our Amarukapo Adebisa Ajumadi African American Ancestral Divination Project documentary film, which we are working on. This is the kind of information we address. We're going to be talking about in the film the different divinatory practices, systems of oracular divination that have been maintained in the blood circles of our people here in the Western Hemisphere in North America, in Hoodoo, which is the Akan tradition in North America, Juju, which is the Yoruba tradition in North America, Voodoo, which is the Fon and Ebe tradition in North America, Wanga, which is the Albambo tradition in North America, Nganga, which is the Fang tradition in North America. These ancestral religious practices, we maintain oracular divination systems for hundreds of years here. It is through our ancestral religious practice that we were guided properly to wage war against the whites and their offspring and force the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. We're going to deal with that. We're working on the film. We initially planned to begin filming in February on location at the end of February. We plan to release the film in June prior to our ODWIRAMAN conference, the Nationism conference, which is on June 24th. Our goal is to have the film complete before that, so it will be ready by the time of the conference. We had a setback. We sent this information out with regard to some of the funding. We've been raising funds through a fundraising campaign, but our goal was to utilize our tax refund to fund most of that. But we had an offset with regard to student loans and so forth, which is the first time it ever happened. So $4,000 we lost that we would have had. So we couldn't begin filming in February or March. So we still have a fundraiser going on right now, like the 90th day of our fundraiser. In the 90 days of the fundraiser, we've had about 62 contributions over the past 90 days. Now, the key is, even on Blog Talk Radio, we have about 323 followers on Blog Talk who get the emails and so forth. On our YouTube channel, we have over 3,800 subscribers who click subscribe because they like the videos that we have. We have enough people right there within the Blog Talk following community to raise the funds we need. Right now, we're just trying to get to the 20% mark of our fundraising so that we can begin to film on location. We're still trying to get the film done before June. So we're still trying to raise about $3,000 more so we can do that. With 30, 40, 50, 100 people, we could do that in 10 minutes. But it goes to the conditioning that we've been operating under. We have 3,800 people on YouTube who subscribe, 300 on Blog Talk. We have, of course, 5,000 friends on Facebook and so forth. Of course, all of those thousands of people are not all focused on that kind of information, but there are hundreds of people who do. We have at least 4,000 to 5,000 downloads of our free books every month. We've had over 3 million hits on our website over the past 12 months. So even just with the downloads of the book, 4,000 to 5,000 per month, we have a number of people who are tuning in, hundreds of people listening to the broadcast, each of the different broadcasts, sometimes thousands of listens to different broadcasts. So we have enough people right where we are to be able to raise the funds. Once we get the funds, we'll be able to begin to film on location. Once we release the film, then hundreds of thousands of our people will benefit because of the information they will be able to transform their lives. In our books and publications, we've been able to assist people to overcome drug addiction, overcome negative behavioral patterns with their family, children, spouses, and so forth, so they can realign themselves and become productive. The film will just expand upon that. So this is something that's beneficial. We put the link to the fundraiser in the chat room if you would like to support that. Any donation is welcome. Yedase for those who have donated. We have, out of 90 days, we've had about 60 donations. Some people have donated twice or even 3 times just because they support the work that we are doing. But we do believe that out of the thousands of people who download the free book on a monthly basis, we have more than 60 people that support the work. So if you are truly supportive of the work we are doing and you haven't had a chance to contribute yet, and if you are able to contribute, please do so today. We can do so right now, thefundraiser.com, Amado Capo Adebisa link. As soon as we can raise the rest of the funds just to get to the 20% mark, we can begin to schedule. Our goal was to begin scheduling on location first at the end of February. When we lost that $4,000, we said we would try to generate the funds, get that, restore that, and maybe by the end of March, we will be able to start filming on location. but we were not able to raise enough funds in that fashion. We only had, since March, maybe about 30 people over the past 40 or so days who made a contribution. So the goal is to try to begin filming on location this month. As soon as we can raise the funds, if we can raise the funds tonight, then we will schedule those trips and begin to go to the different states. We have to go to New Orleans, Miami, Ohio, Chicago, North Carolina, the different seats of voodoo and hoodoo and wanga and juju and so forth in the different parts of the country where the shrines of these divinities and the people who are at these shrines who have maintained the rights of the divination system, who we will be interviewing and showcasing in the film. Voodoo Queen Kalinda LeBeau in New Orleans, Tajara Niaya Nebehet in North Carolina, who's the authoress of Ra Seki Kinetic Reiki and that whole system. Wabet, the Shak Tupac Wajet, who's the authoress of Wachet Yoga. We also have Mama Mawusi Ashakir, who is the founder of the Body Temple Institute. There was a healing and so forth. These different seats of voodoo and juju, hoodoo, Hakan tradition. Of course, we will be talking about our divination system. So these different seats in different states we have to travel through. But as soon as we raise the funds, we will schedule those trips, get the necessary software and so forth, and begin to film immediately. And as soon as we can begin to film, complete that process, then we have to go through the long editing process. And we still aim to finish that by June before the conference. So we're going to take a call on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line, number 1295. You had a question or a comment. And before you comment, we just want to say, for those who are listening online, if you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you have about 2 minutes to call in. After 11 o'clock, then it will shut off online. For those who are on the phone line, will still be able to hear. So if you want to continue to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in within the next 2 minutes. The call-in number is 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. Call in so you can get on the phone lines in the next 2 minutes. For those who are not able to stay on, of course, it will be recorded so you can listen to the rest of it after it's uploaded on the site. But if you're not able to stay on, get after tuning in. If you would like to support the work that we're doing, please go right now to the Amado Capo Adebisa fundraising link. You can see it on our Facebook page. You can see it in the chat room. You can see it on our the video we did on our YouTube page. You'll find that fundraising link for the film. Make a contribution if you would like to, or purchase one of the books. You can receive a book or more for your contribution. Okay, so on the phone line, number 1295, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the special book sale you guys had going, if you guys had a chance to get those books shipped out yet.
Yes, so we sent out a notice. We're sending out those this week. So for the people who don't know, we had a sale going on. The entire 25 book set for $125. You see that on the website. So what we do is we typically order. Sometimes we have to order ink on demand because we don't always have the books in inventory because people don't order those books and we just have books sitting there. So when people order, we order ink on demand and then we wait for the shipment to come in. And then once the shipments come in, then we can start processing the order. So we got a couple of shipments for ink this week. So we're in the process of completing those sale orders, so yours will be going out by the weekend. We'll be shipping those out this week.
Excellent. Well, that'll do it for me. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, Medase. We appreciate the support. And what we had was we had that sale. When you see that button on the website. We had it for a limited time, but then there were some people who were not able to take advantage of the sale during that particular time simply because of the way that their paychecks fell on certain dates, so we left the button up there. So if you, and in fact, somebody sent us an email about that saying, can they didn't get paid until later after the date, could they still take advantage of that particular sale for the whole 25-book set for $125? So we did say yes, and we sent out, we mentioned that in one of our emails, the mass emails. If you want to receive the mass emails, by the way, click the follow button on this channel, OG.FO Blog Talk Radio, OG.FO/OG.FO. Click the follow button on the page. When you click the follow button, that means that you're on the list. So anytime we send out an update about broadcasts or the upcoming conferences or whatever we're sending out, you're on the email list and you'll get that. So if you haven't been receiving the email, that's because you did not click the follow button. So just click that and then you're automatically on the list. So we sent that out in one of the emails letting people know we left the button up there. So it's still up on the page, the entire 25-book set for $125, which includes shipping. Okay, we're going to the next call on the phone line. Chiavo on the phone line, number 9440. You had a question or a comment?
Hi, Kwesi. This is Tanisha. I met you at the last conference. I'm from Kansas City.
Yes.
Do you remember me? Okay. So I have two questions. You do? Okay, good. I have two questions. The first question is the Asona Abusia, right? I have read so many different materials, and I cannot find the goddess associated with that clan. And I don't know if it's something in a publication that you all have, or I just have not been able to find it. So that's my first question.
Okay, so yes, the problem is with regard to a lot of things that are printed. Most of the people who, first of all, it's not a lot of information published on Akan ancestry legend. You have information published by white ethnographers and then even some Ghanaian academics talking about certain aspects of the culture. When it comes to the religion and the Abosom, the divinities, many of those who are trained in universities are Christians, and therefore that biases their outlook, and they don't even speak to talk about the divinities in detail, or they try to shun that. So it's not that much written, period, about the Abosom. And then a handful of things that you find published, the information is limited. So you probably read about their 7 great ancestresses of different clans. You may have read a couple of the stories about some of the clans and so forth. If you look in our book, the Okra Complex, The Soul of Akanfo, in that particular publication, as well as in Kamit and Ntoro, the Black Nation and Divinity, but in the Okra Complex, we're talking about, in the middle of the text, we touch upon the 7 matriclans, and we touch upon the 12 tetraclan divinities. We show that the deities called the 7 Heru divinities, those 7 female divinities, whose shrines in nature are the quote-unquote Pleiades star system. Those are their shrines out there, but then, of course, Heru has shrines on Earth as well and in the human body. But the Pleiades star system are governed by the 7 Heru, so in ancient Kamit, and we show this in the text. Sometimes they show them as 7 cows. Sometimes they show them as 7 female divinities. But it's the 7 Heru divinities. The 7 matriclans are governed by those 7 Heru divinities. We're going to be publishing another text dealing with those in detail. If you look at in the text in ancient Kamit that we're talking about in the Okra complex in that text, and we list the specific chapter. I believe that's the chapter 125 in the Rulu Pertinent Meru, and they list the names of those 7 different forms of Heru or
you said chapter
Heru
125.
divinity. I believe it's chapter 125, but it's in the book. Hold on one second. Let me pull it up real quick.
Okay.
Give me one. no, I'm sorry. It's chapter 148.
Okay. And that's the Pertim Haru, right?
Right, so that's in the Runu Pertim Haru. So when you're looking in the different, there are a couple of versions where they have an appendix and they have the same text from different, like the Papyrus of Ani or the Papyrus of Hunefer or the Papyrus of Nek, different ones with the same chapter. So in one of them, you'll find the names of those 7 different Het Eru divinities.
Okay. When you said say the name,
we are going to publish a text specifically on that.
Did you say are you Ru Pertim Haru? What are you saying?
Say it again.
When you said chapter 148, I didn't hear you said Pertim Haru, but you said a word before that. Was that Ru? Are you? What did you say?
Right. So Ru. So it's the full title is the Ru Nu Pertim Haru, which means the chapters of coming forth by day.
Okay.
Ru means it's a plural for chapter or section.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just wasn't as clear. Okay, but you said it's in chapter 148, so I'll look through that. And my second question is in regards to you had sent me I think it's Impievo. Is that how you say it? Impievo? I'm not sure. The prayer for Impievo, right, for substance abuse for my friend, and it worked out phenomenally. But I was reading along and regarding domestic violence, and I think the other was trauma. Is that right? Anyway,
yes.
I wanted to know, is it the same prayer for all 3 of those, or is there a different prayer for each one? Because I wanted to refer friends that had fell into the other 2 categories, their issues. I wanted to refer them to whatever ritual prayer applied.
Yes. So it is the same. It is the same ritual practice, because what it is it's as you see, it's a ritual to align with the Kra, the Ka, the ODWIRAMAN, the soul, the divinity in the head region. That's what that ritual practice is dealing with. The first part of it is them looking at the Kukutuntun, Ubin Shang, Wawajita, and then, at least once, and then going into that ritual practice. But yes, the key to alignment, whether we're overcoming addiction permanently, or having problems with intergenerational or transcarnational suffering with trauma, or any other issue, is realigning with the crop, because fundamentally there's a disjointedness, as we talked about, or a disalignment from the crop. That's the key to all of our issues, our manifestations of disorder. So when we realign with the crop, then we can realign with thoughts, intentions, and actions that are harmonious, and we can repel disordered entities, negative projections from other people, disordered influences, old conditionings, and so forth. So the key is to realign with the crop. So it is the same ritual practice. Even though there's some additional material, like them listening to the broadcast, like somebody with the trauma recovery alignment piece, the Akuma Tra, they can listen to the broadcast dealing with Amani Hunu, overcoming transcarnational suffering, and they can read that document as well, but it's still going to go, and it'll give them detailed information about that specific issue, but it's still going back to, when you get here to ritual practice, aligning with the deity that governs your head. So yes, it's the same ritual practice for each one.
Okay, and I just thought of this question, but this is the last thing I'll ask regarding tonight's message about Khunem, or I think that's saying that right. What does that invocation process look like? That's probably, and I've been kind of all over all the different articles. I really haven't followed a particular pattern. I've just kind of read as I felt led to, and it's helped me a great deal. But tonight's message is so near and dear to my heart, because literally this morning I said, I've got to figure out how to deal with this hypocrisy in my life. I promise you, those exact words came out of my mouth this morning that I've read, and this morning I said, but this issue, hypocrisy, and when I said, when you talked about buy black, That is the entire conversation I had with myself this morning after I left my shrine. I walked away and I said, I don't buy black enough. I probably spend maybe 20%, if that much, buying black. But it wasn't even that. It was just holistically, how do I rid myself of this hypocrisy? So let me first say thank you. I went to my shrine, broken this morning over this issue, and walked away still broken about the issue when I went to the gym. And so when I got this email message, this broadcast message, I'm even now, it's hard not to cry. I'm so emotional because this is exactly what I asked for. It's what I needed. So now I just would like to ask a little bit about what that would look like. I do have 2 shrines. I do have one for the ancestors. I do have one for the Abosom. So I do have 2 separate shrines, but I just want to know, because this is something I need to do. I want to go to my shrine, and I just want you to help me to know what that should look like from an invocation standpoint, and if there's maybe a prayer that I've missed in reading the materials.
Okay. I mean, I'll thank you for sharing that, because, we always try to, the broadcast that we put forward, we don't just, look at a list of deities and pick one out and talk about them. The goal is to attune to what the insurmountable say is needed for this particular night, and then put that information out. So that's what we always try to do. So that's just confirmation of what we're doing.
This is so right on. I just got approved for a radio broadcast that I didn't even know I wanted it. I'll just be completely honest. I've just been doing the shrine work. I did the same MPA bowl myself for a completely separate issue, and it worked. And from there, I felt prompted to contact the radio station about a show, because I had a lot of issues regarding ancestral religion that I didn't even know were issues until I came across your materials. But I said, I'm just going to contact them, because when I left my shrine that morning, my ancestor shrine, I just felt prompted to do it. And I did. And they told me to come in right then. Stop what you're doing. Come in right now. And I went there, and they told me that they wanted to give me a broadcast. And I told them very clearly, because it's a nonprofit organization, and they speak to all different races. And I was so clear with them, and I told them, I said, I will not speak if you want me to represent anybody else but black people, period. And every other person on that radio station has said, we'll broadcast for everybody in the community and blah, 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 blah. I said, I won't do it. So when I came to the shrine, and just backing up before what happened this morning, I was broken because I got this broadcast, and I said, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be on this radio broadcast not living the way that I'm promoting. And that's what was breaking me down so much. So this is what I needed. Just as you're speaking to my heart, I want to be able to be as pure speaking to the hearts of others. So I just, what I say from my heart, from the very bottom of my heart, I just thank you for tuning in to your cry and serving us the way that you do. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm crying.
No,
thank you so much.
That. I'm glad that it's been helpful. And hey, you can have your own broadcast. You can start a Blog Talk Radio broadcast and reach more people. So you can do whatever you need to do. You can establish whatever you need to establish. Just listen to what your people are telling you to do. And even with regard to the question about how to go about that, you already you're getting communication obviously from your insurmountable, from your ancestresses and ancestors. You're getting communication from your cry. So when you're at the shrine for your cry, that is an Abosom shrine in and of itself, right?
Right.
So when there are other Abosom that you feel you need to communicate with, or they're impressing upon you to communicate with them, when you're at the shrine of your cry, you can also call the name of that Abosom as well. Now you can use a prayer that's connected with Khunem. If you looked in the index and found one in the Pert and Heru, where he's being spoken about and used that particular incantation, if you would like, but the name of the divinity, him or herself, is invocatory in and of itself, because they already know that you need to communicate and they just want you to tune into them anyway. So that name in and of itself is allowing or letting them know that you're ready to receive what they have. So that name is an invocation in and of itself. And then they'll take it from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Madase. Just thank you so much. That's what I needed. That is exactly what I needed. And that prayer works. You know, I just want to say that for those that are listening, I had an issue that I have been dealing with for literally for over 30 years. And I followed that to the T. I did everything that was listed there. And I was set free. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't believe that I would be. I didn't go into it believing that I would be. But I just went into it saying that I'm gonna do it. And it worked.
Okay, I really appreciate that, Medase, because that helps for people to understand what it is aligning with your own trial, with your own divinity, and then operating based on that. So unlike a Christian prayer or something like that, or some meditation somebody would tell you to do, or some ritual somebody would tell you to do, it's not just, like you said, it's not based on belief. It's based on you dealing with an actual entity, a divinity, who's assigned to you. And once you come to them and align with them, then, of course, you know, the energy and consciousness that they have that's already coded within you, you have access to that. You open yourself to it. You're not repelling it anymore, so you can, you know, utilize it to your best benefit. So may I say for sharing and letting people know, you know, the effectiveness of our ancestral culture.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
May I say, we appreciate the call.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, we have a couple more calls on the phone line. We want to make sure we did not miss anything in the chat room, either if there were any questions. There's a question I found that this form of the elephant that I have in my shrine, and found a smaller one that I put at work. I stopped having problems at work. I feel I'm not right by not knowing the name. Is there a deity? And the second question, Ananse in the form of Alegba, do you agree with the practice of using rum and cigars to invoke him? So the first question, so you have the elephant on your shrine. You stop having problems at work because you use the elephant. Is there a divinity? So yes, number one, so for example, and this is part of that intersection that we're talking about. The sister who just called from Kansas asked about the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan, which is one of the 7 master clans in our Khan culture. The Asona clan, or the Asona Abusia, the animal totem for the Asona clan, a major animal totem for them is the Esunu, and Esunu means elephant. And of course, the elephant is great and powerful, strong and deliberate and so forth, and a leader and so forth. So the Esunu is the name of that sacred divine animal totem connected to the divinity that governs that clan. At the same time, in ancient Kamit, one of the titles is Abu. Abu means elephant, and the whole text that we were reading from, talking about Khunem, the divinity, and the king going down from southern Kamit to the shrine of Khunem, and finding about all the metals and the precious stones within the land in that region that they mine to use to restore the shrines and so forth. That region itself is called Abu. The whites and their offspring call it Elephantine because the rocks and so forth look like elephants. But the region is called Abu, or the region of the elephant, the divine sacred elephant. So the sacred divinity Kunwimu in that region, connected to that animal totem, which is Abu, is the elephant. So you can use the term Abu for elephant in ancient Kamit. You can use the term Esunu. You find out whatever ancestral clan you come from, what is the term for that divinity, and that animal totem in that language, whether it's Yoruba or Igbo or whatever it is, you can utilize that name. Kweku Anasi or Awuku Anasi Nana Awuku, who is called Legba in Vodun and Eshu Legba in the Yoruba tradition. He's Awuku Anansi, and Akan, the trickster, quote unquote, messenger of the Supreme Being, the communicator. So, rum and cigars, that's a recent practice. Of course, we weren't using cigars on the continent. We weren't using that until we came in contact with the whites and their offspring. So we're not at all dependent on rum and cigars to invoke a divinity. That's what some people have incorporated later on after coming into this region. The divinity is the divinity. You can invoke them through ritual prayer. You can invoke them through libation. Once you do that, you can find out from that divinity, as well as from your direct blood ancestresses and ancestors, what you should utilize as an offering for the divinity. What did they use as an offering for divinity before we became influenced by the culture and the implements of the whites and their offspring? So you can invoke them, as we talked about with the other sister, the most powerful, quote-unquote, asun line or talisman is the name itself. The name is the most powerful talisman. It's the configuration of sound vibrations that are emanating from the instrument when you have a real name. So just like we always use that example as we use in our book, Ubin Shang, if you have an instrument, different instruments, different brass instruments, trumpet, trombone, saxophone, whatever it is, tuba, whatever, they're different in shape, the same material but different in shape, because they're different in shape and different in size. You can blow in a tuba, you have one collection of sound vibrations emanating. Blow through a trumpet, a different collection, through a trombone, a different collection. And the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at are circulating through created entities, divinely created entities, which includes Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only, as well as plant life, animal life, and mineral life. And that divine living energy is moving through one unique structure. The collection of sound vibrations emanating from you as an instrument are going to be different from the same divine living energy circulating within another Afurakani person, because no Afurakani person or Afuraitkaitnit person has the exact same form or shape, unless you're identical twins, and even then there's a slight difference, but nobody has the exact same form or shape or energy configuration. So the divine living energy circulating through you generates a collection of sound vibrations that are unique to your form. It's the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at, Yonkunton and Yonkunton moving through another Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit individual generates a different collection of sound vibrations that's unique to that individual's spiritual form. So when you enunciate that collection of sound vibrations, replicate them with your vocal cords, you're actually enunciating your actual true name that's emanating from you at all times. The same is true of the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the divinity. The energy emanating from them is a collection of energetic vibrations that's unique to them. So when you speak their name, you're invoking their energy. You're provoking their energy through invocation. So that's the most powerful invocation, is calling on their name in and of itself. When you give offerings, that's another form of provoking their energy as well. Different plant life, animal life, mineral life are categorized according to their energy projections, governed by specific divinities that have those same energy projections. They're children of those divinities, so when you offer plant life and mineral life from those different categories governed by that divinity, that provokes the energy of the divinity, so you can give offerings and so forth. But you can find out from your ancestors and ancestors directly which offerings are appropriate based on your clan, but also from the divinity himself. Okay. All right, we're going to get back on the phone line real quick. We have a few minutes left. And again, for those who are not able to stay on, we are in the midst of this fundraising effort for the film, and that includes our institution, but this film that we're producing is part of our institutional effort. So when we look at Kongwa Suyadan, our institution of learning, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship, part of that process is, in our institutional work, is the production of our books, our 25 books, but also the production of this film, which will educate and empower our people as well. So we're having this fundraising effort right now. As soon as we can raise the funds, even if we can raise the rest of the funds tonight, then we can schedule our first trip to go to the shrines in New Orleans and Ohio and Florida, North Carolina, and Chicago, so we can complete the film and start that process and eventually complete that process. So go to the link if you're not able to stay on right now, or even if you're on right now and you're just waiting to get on the phone line, you can go to the link right now, fundraiser, fundraiser.com/AmaruCapo_Adebisa. The link is in the chat room. The link is on our Facebook page, on our website, and so forth, on our YouTube channel. And you can contribute right now. We're going through this process right now. Okay, Michelle on the phone line, number 7071. You got a question or a comment?
Jill Quasi. I just wanted to ask two quick questions. The first one is to distinguish obia that is practiced in Jamaica and I think it's pronounced the same way, obia, as far as Igbo tradition. And the second question was, do you know of any reliable sources that you will refer people to if they're searching for Igbo family traditions and they're trying to, incorporate those cultures and traditions into their day-to-day?
Okay, so the Igbo tradition, southeastern Nigeria, so obia in Jamaica is coming from the term obai and akan. Very often they would translate obai and akan and obia in Jamaica as quote-unquote witchcraft, but it had different connotations. But that's just a popular term taken from the Akan language, continued to be used to call the whole Akan tradition. Just like Undu or Kudu is a term in the Akan language dealing with root work, medicine from roots, plants, trees, plant life, and so forth. That term became the term that was used for the entire tradition in North America, so it's called Kudu. Same thing with obia in Jamaica. But obia is really the Akan ancestral religion in Jamaica. There's a term obi that's associated with divination in Igbo, and they'll say the obi man because they're using obi or coconuts and so forth for divination, and sometimes they'll use that to describe the Igbo tradition to a certain extent in Jamaica. But the Igbo tradition itself is a full tradition, of course. One of the publications that we would recommend, a 2-volume set called After God is Dibia, D-I-B-I-A, After God is Dibia. The author's name is J.A. Ume. The last name is Ume, U-M-E-H. There's a couple of our publications, a few of our publications, as a matter of fact, we mentioned that work. So in that 2-volume set, we're talking about the Igbo tradition, Igbo cosmology, Igbo Arusi or deities. He also makes connections linguistically and cosmologically with the Igbo deities and their manifestation in ancient Kamit. Like Agu-Isi, as we mentioned, the divinity called Akwesi or Awusi, which is Alsar in Akan, Awusi in Akan, Alsar in ancient Kamit, Agu-Isi in Igbo, Idemili is in Igbo is Alset in ancient Kamit, and Adwa in Akan, and so forth. So he goes through some of the major Igbo divinities and talks about Igbo divination and so forth. but his last name is Umeh, U-M-E-H, and the name of the two-volume set is After God is D-B-I, D-I-B-I-A.
Okay. What did I say, Quincy?
Okay, any out there? Okay, going back to the phone line, the Chavo on the phone line, number 4339. You had a question or comment?
What's up, Brother Quincy? I just have a question, thank you, in regards to, I hear people, whether it's online or in person, when they say that they're at their altar, they will put vices out. And when I say vices, they'll put things like liquor, as you mentioned, cigars, cigarettes, and other things that, whether they're giving them to the ancestors or ancestress and the deities, it seems negative to give to them. But then they'll also say things that would happen naturally, which is a part of science, such as for an example, if they give liquor, it will be less amount in it the next morning due to evaporation or mold in the cup. And they will say things like they must really like it, or that was confirmation that they were there. And I usually try to correct them or give them pieces of advice showing, how that's not necessarily it, and ways to deter them away from that. But can you, elaborate on, other than them being able to get confirmation in their ceremonies that they are reaching their ancestors and ancestresses and deities, how can they confirm what they're putting out is good for them? Or, other than me saying, you're giving them vices, is there a way I can talk that off or use that as talking point?
Okay. So what's happening, of course, is that we've been conditioned, since we've been over here and influenced by the whites and their offspring, whether in North America or the Caribbean and South America and so forth. Our people were not only enslaved on plantations, but we were also enslaved in distillery, being forced to work on the manufacture of rum and whiskey and everything else. Some of our people were enslaved there. So we started utilizing cigarettes and cigars and things like that because we came in contact with our enemies, the whites and offspring. The same product that caused cancer and killed our people, cigarettes and cigars and so forth, then we're being conditioned to place those on the shrine to call those ancestors and ancestresses back, utilizing things that kill them. That's like if somebody died of crack cocaine addiction, then somebody told you, well, listen, go get you some crack rock and put them on the shrine to call your aunt who died of a crack addiction. Of course, that's insane, but we've been conditioned. Some of our people have been conditioned to do that. They've been doing it for, over a century and so forth, and they're coming up with rationalizations for that. And there's a difference between the tobacco plant, which is a plant, and, a Marlboro. So that's a totally different thing. So you can't use that justification for that. It's not assisting our people. Utilizing things that killed our people are not assisting our people. On one hand, people are doing it just out of habit because they were told to do that. On the other hand, which is more detailed, some ancestors and ancestresses who are not spiritually cultivated will request those things, just like a crack addict will request crack and an alcoholic will request alcohol when they're here alive, when they make their transition. They're looking for a rush of energy, and they will request those kinds of things because they're still uncultivated. Just like you wouldn't go get some alcohol if an alcoholic would stand on the corner and said, hey, can you give me some money so I can buy some alcohol? Will you go buy me some alcohol? You wouldn't give it to them because you don't want to further their enslavement, their addiction. You may buy them some food or something like that, but you're not going to give them some more alcohol. You wouldn't give a crackhead some more crack and so forth. You're not going to do the same thing when they make their transition and they're earthbound and hanging around the shrine, promoting themselves as a spiritually cultivated ancestor, which they are not. They're asking for things that are vices because they just want a surge of energy once the fire is put to the cigarette or the cigar, or once the alcohol is put out there. That magnetism gives them a temporary high, just like the crack gave them a temporary high or burst of energy, and they will allow. That's what's really going on. So when people actually have spirits requesting some things, some people don't have spirits requesting anything. They're just going along with what their Babalao, their Iya or Baba or, Padre or Madre told them, which is misinformation, but they're just going along with it because that's what they were told, and every answer they give you is what they were told. Then you have other people who have spirits actually requesting things, and they really are requesting things, but these are not Aboso Marisha, these are not spiritually cultivated ancestors and ancestors. They are the ones who are uncultivated. When people are requesting things that are self-destructive, that are destructive to us as a people, destructive to us as individuals, and so forth, and they're trying to perpetuate that, then you know it's an uncultivated spirit, and it's unnecessary. Now, there are times when, of course, natural things, somebody received palm juice or tapping the palm tree, and the natural sap that came out of the palm tree is utilized for a specific divinity. That's one thing. That's different from Seedman. That's not Crown Royal. There's no relationship to that. There's no divinity of Crown Royal sitting around waiting for somebody to finish the work at the distillery so they can do their spiritual work. It doesn't work that way. So when you listen to the crop, listen to the Abosom, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, which are the Nanano Usamako, then you get some real direction. Otherwise, people are being misdirected and passing that misdirection off as proper spiritual communication. So that's the information I will give them. And in fact, we talk about some of that in the Okra Complex book. We talk about the communications from discarnate spirits that are also disordered, passing themselves off as cultivated spirits or deities and so forth, and going against your crowd, which you know is correct. You're being pulled by your crowd in one direction, but then these other spirits are asking for something else, and now there's a dilemma. You always follow what your crowd internally is directing you to do. So we talk about that in the Okra Complex book.
Perfect. I'll go back and look at it. Thank you so much, Madase.
Okay. Yeah, I say that. Appreciate the call. Okay, we have one more call on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line. Number 1267. You had a question or a comment?
Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, what's up?
So, earlier today, this is timely. I just wanted to add that earlier today I had a conversation with someone who planned to take a road trip for several hours away. So they mentioned that they're going to stop off somewhere and sleep overnight. And so I asked her, well, where do you plan on staying? And she said, well, we'll just find some, hotel near the interstate or something like that. So I suggested, well, why don't you look for a black-owned bed and breakfast? I understand that it's really easy to find these online. And as soon as I said that, lots of, qualifications and criteria come out about, it's got to be a nice place, and we just want to stop somewhere real close to the interstate. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. And I was kind of like, well, not really, shocked, but this is what we find a lot when just making these types of suggestions for supporting black businesses. And it's also interesting, that this comes out today, and then later today, I get a phone call from that person, and she tells me, I'm so glad you suggested that because I looked and I found this really nice black-owned bed and breakfast online, and the pictures look really nice. So I'm really looking forward to staying there. They even have a room that they call the Africa room. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Okay, and that's a good directly ties in, of course. I remember looking up some information on hotels, and there's a National Association for Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers, NABHOOD. And they have a big website. They list all of the hotels and, motels and so forth in the different cities and other countries owned by our people. Some of them are very upscale. Some of them are just basic, like Motel 6s and so forth. Some of them are very upscale hotels and so forth. So they have an investment in Summit trade show, the International African American Hotel Ownership and Investment in Summit and Trade Show. So when we're traveling like that, you can go to sites like that and you can find, wherever we are, where the closest place you can find. Some of them are owners, they're franchisees, and some of them just have their own hotels or motels with their names on them, but some of them are franchise owners, so they may be the owner of a Marriott or a Hilton, but it's a black-owned, just like black people have franchise McDonald's and so forth. Some of them are black-owned Marriotts and black-owned Hiltons, but then some of them have their own, hotels and motels with their own names on them. But, again, that's just the principle of our first response is no. It's always, no, I can't do it. But in general, we have the idea that we need to support black business when it's out, time to actually jump in or make that assessment. Our first response is no, we can't. And very often that's the end of it. The good thing is with, in your situation, they were able to come around and actually derive a greater benefit for seeking it out. And that's why we always say with the Khunem economic development model, starve the beast and feed the pride. It's about making an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds you would have potentially wasted with the white snare spring, starve the beast and feed the pride. There are people who may have decided to go to, Starbucks tomorrow and decide, I'm going to spend $5 or $10 in the funds to assist with the film that they're trying to make over here, as opposed to giving the money to Starbucks. That's just one decision for one person, and that's just, say $10. But when 100 people do that or 200 people do that, all independently in different parts of the country, but collectively, even though they're not speaking to one another and operating on the same, with the same agenda, collectively, that's $2,000, and we're automatically at the point instantaneously within a few hours where we can begin to schedule and go film the, segments and then release the film soon and release it for the community so people can begin to benefit, not just, amongst the cultural community, but Afuraitkaitnut people wherever we are in the country and different parts of the world. So just making a simple decision transforms lives, and we have to tune into that. That's why when the elders ask the question, she sees all these people talking about buy black and red, black, and green and pumping their fists and everything else, but then she's contributing to our work sometimes 2 and 3 times for a particular project, and the people who are doing the most cheering haven't contributed once, and she just asked the question, what's wrong with these people? And it made me look into what's really happening with regard to not just ignorance, what is happening with the hypocrisy. And, of course, that's a behavioral piece. We have to deal with the one who can join once things become disjointed. And if we don't deal with Khunem to help us conjoin and reattach, he already attached the soul with the body before we incarnated. He's the one that can reattach the soul with the body when we become disjointed. If we don't deal with him consciously, we may do it unconsciously and align ourselves with his energy because we're realigning unconsciously. But if we don't deal with that on a conscious basis, then the hypocrisy will continue to happen. And 20 years from now, people will still be talking about buy black and support black businesses, and they will still be consistently supporting the whites and their offspring. Listening to blog talk radio shows or watching videos or going to presentations, and then as soon as they leave, giving all of their funds to white supremacist businesses, organizations, and institutions. So we have to really move beyond that and show ritually what we need to do to get back in harmony with order and heal that disjointment. So, made out that we appreciate that info. Okay, so that was I believe that was the last call on the phone line. And we just want to, before we end, we want to make sure we didn't miss anything else in the chat room. Saw some discussions, but we want to make sure we didn't miss any questions. So it looks like those were the only questions that we had. So, I say thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Again, we are in the midst of this fundraising drive for the film. If you have not seen the trailer for the film, you can check out the trailer on the fundraising page. It's a 9-minute trailer talking about the divinatory practices of our ancestral traditions here in North America, carried in our blood circle. During the Musuo Ketia, the Great Diversity, the enslavement era, you will see the different sisters who will be part of the film, as well as myself. Check out the trailer. If you like the information, please contribute to our effort, because we're trying to get this information done. We would have been well into the filming if we had not lost that $4,000 to the tax refund offset over a month ago. So we're trying to catch up to that, just to get to that 20% mark, so we can begin that filming process and move on. So it's on the fundraiser page, on our regular website, and so forth. And Yedase to those who have already contributed, and Yedase to those who are going online right now and taking a couple of minutes to make the contribution now. Yedase, we appreciate you doing that. So again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. And Yebeshe Abio, we will meet again. Good job.